Hey everyone, this is Nate King, and today I'm going to be showing you some typography write-on animations. It's a pretty popular look right now. It really works with cursive writing, great logo animations, so just going to be going over that today. This is a little bit more of a demo, not totally a tutorial. There's some things you're going to need to know already, how to do shape layers, manipulate vertices, and the masks. It would be good if you're all familiar with that because I am going to be moving pretty fast throughout this whole thing. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is create the letters that will be animated. And there's actually a great way to use text in order to create the shape layers that we need for the logo and for the font. We'll change the font to white. And I'm just going to type out best. Now you see with this text layer, we can't really manipulate how it looks if we want to change anything about it. So we need to create shapes from text. And with this new shape layer, we can adjust the shape of the text if we want to make any adjustments with the vertices, and we can put each letter on its own layer. So I'll duplicate that 4 times, and I'll go in and I'll delete the letters on the other layers. So each layer is 1 letter. This will allow me to be able to control each letter independently of the others, allow me to rotate it, and allow me to change position or scale. I'll change each layer's name to the letter that it reflects. And there we go. We've got each letter on its own layer. Now, if you are trying to make sort of a custom font, there's a lot of vertices. This is probably way too many vertices to work with. So oftentimes I will actually make my own shape layers and sort of copy the text with a shape layer of my own, or just make my own font entirely. With a little bit of time, you can create something that looks sort of like it. With even more time, you could make something that looks just like it. I create the custom shape layer in order to adjust a few things about the text, but also whenever you take a text to shape layer, it's always going to give you a lot of vertices, and too many can be a big headache to work with. This is the logo that I came up with. It's a combination of text to shape layers and custom shape layers. And right now, each letter is on its own layer. We're going to pre-compose each letter because we're going to want to add some effects on the inside of the pre-composition. I'm going to right-click on the E, and you can select pre-compose within the menu, or you can do Command-Shift-C for the hotkeys, and you can name it E write-on, and we'll go inside of it. So we're going to be applying an effect called write-on to the letter E and to all the letters. And in order to make it animate properly, we're going to have to separate the letter into segments of its intersections. Otherwise, it will end up looking kind of funny. So I've applied a mask to the E, and I'm going to make it so I'm cutting out where the E intersects itself. Once I have the first segment, I'm going to duplicate that layer and adjust the mask so I can create the second segment. You can duplicate with Command D. and I'll just make the first two segments touch, and then I'll duplicate again for a third segment. Now I've jumped ahead a moment with the write-on effect already applied to show you what will happen if you were to skip the masking step. And you see the write-on is the circle, which turns into a line and traces over the E. But it overflows on the boundaries of the E. So if those parts aren't masked off, the intersections won't work. So search your effects and apply write-on to segment 1 of the E. And you're going to want to change the brush size and brush position. You're going to change the brush position over time and add keyframes so that the line goes over top of the segment that you're writing on. In the effects properties, change on original image to reveal original image. You can adjust the keyframes to change the speed, and you're most likely going to have to adjust the mask on segment 2 so that it's not revealing any part of segment 1. And then apply the write-on to segment 2 and just repeat the process. Add the keyframes for the brush position and change them over time. So once you've pre-composed and added the write-on effect to all of your letters, we're going to go back into the original composition and add a subtle movement effect. This is why each letter needed to be on its own layer. We're going to adjust the rotation and the scale. You can see here I've pre-composed BEST so far, the lower layers, so I'm just going to be showing you the scale and rotation on these letters. First, you need to consider the anchor point for each letter. So I put mine in the bottom left corner. You can adjust the anchor point by hitting Y, and that will drag the anchor point without changing the position of the letter. Make sure that you turn your keyframes into Easy Ease keyframes and enter the graph editor and adjust the movement in here by pulling out the handlebars. I want the scale and the rotation to go very quickly at the beginning and ease into its final spot for both scale and rotation. You can see the rotation working best here on the T as it renders. And here's a little bit more scale and rotation after I've pre-composed all of my letters now. All of them have write-on. I'm just adjusting rotation on this last T, having it come in, and having it scale up as well, easing those. And doing this just adds a little bit extra movement to the letters so they don't look quite so stuck in space. So now we're going to create the liquid drop that moves across the logo. We're going to start this with a new shape layer, and we don't want any fill on it. We just want a stroke. And we're basically just creating the path that the liquid drop is going to follow. We can pull out the Bezier curves, make a nice smooth line. And it's important to try and get this as accurate as possible to what you want your final movement to look like. So make your adjustments now, and it's easier later. So we've made the path, and now we need to make the actual paint drop part. You need to make another new shape layer on top of the one you just made. Adjust the anchor point and bring the anchor point up. Press Y. Bring it up to the very end of your path. And that's where we're going to make just a little circle. 4 points is enough vertices, and we'll drop the stroke and we'll add fill. What we're going to do now is go to Contents, Shape, and Path in the pink shape layer. And we're going to copy the path with Command C. Then we're going to go to the position in the blue shape layer and paste, Command V. This transfers the points that we made from the shape layer into actual movable points, and the shape is going to follow those. We can slide the keyframes around a little bit in order to adjust the speed. If you grab the very last keyframe, it moves all of them. And so we kind of just wanted to overlap right when the cross of the T is coming on. And it definitely takes some adjusting. You might have to adjust each keyframe individually. You need to go up to Layer, Transform, Auto Orient. Make sure Auto Orient along path is checked. And this gives the dot orientation. So now we can create the sort of head and the tail of the dot. Just go into the actual path of the shape. Turn on keyframes. And so the orientation is now moving with the placement of the dot. I've jumped ahead quite a bit to another example of the dot and the dot moving along the path, adjusting the shape of the dot. Consider how as it speeds up, the droplet would probably get longer, and as it slows down, the tail would get shorter. The key thing to keep in mind, though, is that you basically want the head and the tail of the droplet to always remain along the path. I learned this technique from another tutorial by Evan Abrams, and I'm providing the link to that within the notes. So if you want additional detail on creating this dot part, which I would suggest, you should watch that tutorial. He shows how to add an expression and a couple other things to make it look better. I added some accent marks to each letter just for some added detail. You'll need to go into each letter's pre-comp. I'll show you on the B. And they're just shape layers with no fill and just stroke. And I traced sort of along the outside edge of the letter. You'll add a trim path. You can go over to Add and Trim Path. And in order to animate it, you'll adjust the keyframes for the start and the end. And obviously if we drag that out, it gets longer. Put that back to where it was. And just mess with it to see how that affects the animation. And then I took the same things and made it for the animate off part. If we go to the first segment of the B, press U to pull up the keyframes, and we want it to animate off. So effect controls, the stroke length is what we use to adjust the amount of time that the write on is actually stays on the screen. So if we put it at 5, it's going to move back to 5 seconds. But I want it around 2, I want it to write on and then write off fairly quickly. So that's pretty much it. There's a few things that I glossed over a little bit, but hopefully it makes some sense. Let me know what you think. It's my first tutorial, And hopefully I'll be making some more of these as I go along. Thanks a lot.